Okay, well, hey, welcome to, so are you gonna leave, Madeline? Okay, she's gone. All right, so hey, welcome to the third Thursday Nature Series for April. And today we're happy to have Chris Hewitt from the Rochester Town Board. He's gonna talk about a proposed new park in Kerhonkson. Um, Many of you know about the solar farm behind the Rainbow Diner on Route 209. Well, those arrays are behind those arrays are woodlands supporting many unique habitats, old growth trees, underground springs, wetlands, and a small stream. The town board is talking about cutting some trails and clearing some invasive plants and other understory brush to create a forested park. Possibly the first of its kind. Project showcases an effort to merge power generation and public parkland. I mean, imagine a gas-fired power plant or coal or a nuclear power plant next to a public park. Who would go there? Anyway, I'm going to pass it on to Chris. And oh yeah, please wait till the end of the presentation. You can put your questions in the comment box. And at the end of the presentation, he'll take the questions. All right, take it away, Chris.
Thanks, John. I think I know most of you on the call. Thanks for joining us. And right now, everything is in a very exploratory phase. The town of Rochester has owned this 34-acre parcel since 1995. And with the additional acreage that now has the solar array, we own this parcel, which I will share a presentation about. It's called 67.1-3-17. I will begin the presentation now. As a councilman, we explore different ideas throughout the year, but also our primary responsibility is to balance our budget and have a fiduciary responsibility for all constituents. So I'm honored to work with the Environmental Commission and come up with ideas like this and work with the community so that we can get feedback and find out what people would like to do with this property that we own. So I'll begin the presentation now.
Sorry, Chris, I accidentally muted you. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right.
So this is the map. Right now, the solar arrays are on lot 2 and 3. This is a natural wetland right here. And this is what we're talking about, the 34 acres.
You have to share your screen.
Oh, thank
Can
you.
you do that?
Yep. That would help. Okay.
There you go. You got it.
So this map shows lot 2 and 3 is where the solar array is now. And lot 1 is the 34-acre parcel that we're talking about and that we've been visiting recently. In 2020, we made some progress. The town board approved a $2,500 budget to hire a consultant to start background research on the plant and animal species on the property. He and I, Andrew Faust from Center for Bioregional Living, walked and thoroughly assessed the site to establish an idea of a good layout for trails that can lead to significant or rare locations on the property. We began to assess our needs for tree plantings, signage, sitting and observation areas, steps or switchbacks, just as concepts and ideas. Performed some minor cutting and pruning with my small pruning shears to move, flag, and stake. I did that with Andrew, the chair of the Environmental Commission, Madeline Russo, came out with Councilwoman Erin Allen and some other ECC members. Last year, we also publicly presented our findings to the Town of Rochester Board and the ECC. All of those documents are available from the town. 2021 suggested progress that we discussed at the town board meeting last week and sent a letter to all neighbors of this property to continue to investigate the flora and fauna on the property and begin an inventory and descriptions with the ECC and ecology professionals. Communicate with town residents through presentations and neighbor mailing, volunteer days, and information sessions. I'll read all of this in case somebody's listening just with audio. Continue conversation with Nexamp about the town's property and possible public uses. We received an email from a couple of people at Nexamp recently that they wish everyone was as innovative as the town of Rochester. Nobody really thinks to use the existing solar arrays to embrace and really share education. I'll get back to that possibly later. Learn from Ulster County towns that have town parks, example, town of Esopus, about how to officially create a park. Although we own this, we would like to know the steps about creating a park that is accessible and fully legal. Identify and remove invasive species on the property, including multiflora rose, barberry, and Japanese knotweed, abiding by New York State DEC recommendations. Work with landscaping professionals to continue improving the health of the property. Chip branches and other wood debris to prepare for bike trail around large solar array and for trails through the forest. And those are potentials possible. Spread wood chips on the trail system as possible. Find sources and pricing for ideal plants in the agroforestry/forest garden plantings. You'll see on the map that I show, the drawing shows an area that would be great for berries, fruit, and nut plantings. Analyze costs of possible insurance and other annual expenses in order to calculate a possible fee for park usage for schools and non-county residents. Improve trail map and key to include information about interesting locations. What do we have and what can we have? This is the existing property map that I shared already, and the preliminary trail suggestions that we shared with the board last year shows the solar array is already existing with this wetland. There's a cut through the solar array in the middle, and then it goes, there's a fence around the whole solar array. This corner is the large cell tower, and this red spot in the key, which we'll have a zoom of this later, is a potential entrance. Then there is a short trail, a very short trail, because there is a lot of hills and it can be a little bit winding. And then there's a longer trail potentially, but we're not really talking about crossing the river at all, because especially this year, or even looking near the river, because we don't want to disturb anything near the river. What do we have? What can we have? We have an existing Nexamp solar array, and we can have a flat pedestrian and bicycle trail that actually I'm talking about having Nexamp fund that project, the wood chips and signage that's associated with any costs related to this area. And Nexamp and I spoke this morning, and although I can't say if they would fund it, we are exploring that. Trail coming through with signage. You can see here the agroforestry talks about tree crops, heartnut, hardy pecans, chestnuts, shellbark hickory, and then you'll see pictures later of a lot of existing berries like blackcap raspberries. There's blueberries already, and we'll get back to that later. Upcoming improvements, I had a lot of bullet points earlier that talks about 2021, and that's what we discussed as a board recently. But in the next month, what we're looking to do is continue to investigate flora and fauna, which you'll see I've done a lot of that research in the photos that are coming up. Identify and remove invasive species on the property, including multiflora rose, barberry, Japanese knotweed, also a lot of wild grape. Chip branches and other wood debris to prepare for bike trail. Continue conversation with Nexamp and learn from Ulster County towns that have parks. Let's take a walk. So at the entrance near where we would think people could park is a giant 300-year-old white oak, and then you'll see that in the distance. And this wetland had to be protected, not only when this was a sand mine, but also when Nexamp or Borrego was building the array. You can see here there's a berm that stops erosion, and that could be a potential relaxation or bird watching spot. ECC member Mark Dietrich already came and did some inventorying of bird species, and this wetland is very abundant with amphibians and birds. So entering the land is near the corner of the solar array, and there's a low spot in the land that is a natural entrance, which is on the map. You can see here with the green tape that originally when I was looking at this last year with Andrew, we did some staking to understand where the edges are. And I recently decided we shouldn't have any trails near property edges. So right here, there's barbed wire in these trees, that's an edge. I moved the whole trail away from the neighbor. This is poison sumac, which could give somebody a bad rash if they touched it. And so we would also avoid any species like that. It's not necessarily invasive, but we wouldn't have to remove it all, but it is poisonous. Prune some species for shape and health, like this one is interesting, and it's on a natural path that exists already, a deer path, and it could be pruned for interest. Approaching Millbrook, suddenly you hear the sound of the creek, and recently it has been rushing, but we would avoid edges of the Millbrook with the trail, but we would guide the trail to enjoy the sounds of the creek. You can see these three pictures aren't next to each other, it's during a walk along the creek. And so it's really nice to have it next to you, but not be in the riparian zone where damage could be done. Some of the invasive species, like on the left, a multiflora rose, and on the right, wild grapes are choking out important species and bushes like black-cap raspberries and cedar. This is something that John Messerschmidt, who introduced me, and his company, Hudson Valley Native Landscaping, can help with their crew to identify and remove safely and insured. The whole property is filled with springs, and that's why some people may have heard it called a Watershed Educational Park. A lot of the education is about how springs start in hillsides, and springs start small, lead to the Millbrook, lead to the Rondout, lead to the Hudson, and that's part of the Rondout Watershed Alliance education, that everything is, we all live downstream, and so here is where we can learn about where upstream starts. Some springs babble above and below the ground, like this one on the left, will suddenly disappear and reappear. Some springs tear gashes in the hillsides, and others come pouring into the Millbrook. Then the trail comes naturally close to the Millbrook again, but more near where it's windy and bends very quickly. And there's an area over here with over 100 mature sycamore trees that I call Sycamore Peninsula, where the creek really comes winding around all of these sycamores. And then there's also a hillside in the middle here that has very mature red oaks over 200 years old. So then the short exit on the map I showed earlier, really the first work in the park, or any progress we make with town officials, elected officials, or environmental commission members, would be to start with a smaller trail. Instead of going very deep into the woods, we'll see what we can manage. And so this stake, you can see, starts exiting right away. And during the exit, it changes very dramatically, quickly into a open forest, then a dark forest, and then a lot of springs pop up again during the exit. As you exit, and you can see the solar array again in the background, there's this amazing catalpa tree, and this reminds us that there are many opportunities for benches or sitting areas where children can play. Adam, I saw you're on the call. This is a free jungle gym, comes with the property. We're looking at a jungle gym, a playground for the Accord Town Park now, so I'm joking with you, Adam. And you'll see another tree in the next slide that is very fun to play on also. Brambles and clearings. So then we come out of the forest, and we're back at the solar array, which could be a 10-foot wide wood chip trail, flat for pedestrians and bicycles, and funded by Nexamp, potentially, we hope. But also, there are already berries there. But we would like to work with the Cornell Cooperative Extension to buy hundreds of blueberries during their April sale, very affordable, and start to plant native species again in these edges near the trail. This is what I call the white ash playground. I've never seen a bigger tree fall down from its roots. It looks small, but it's huge. And then I got on top, and you can see on the left, a kid would love playing in here. And as you exit near the cell tower, there is a fence around that as well. Next amp is supportive of the flat pedestrian and bike path, and there's already a very large pile of brush that can be chipped and used. And that's part of what we're looking at in the forest itself, is how do we clean up the forest, not really cut or clear, but how do we get rid of invasives? How do we improve the health of species? And how do we move things to make it more walkable? So the question earlier is, what do we have and what can we have? And we're open to suggestions. This is only the beginning of a process. Phase 1 was small and simple. We're in phase 2 right now to see what we have and gather input from the community. And you can see from images like this that this could be a spectacular site to visit and have friends and family, maybe a barbecue and a picnic. There's so many potentials, and I hope to explore that with all of you. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, what were you talking about with insurance? What was that about?
With the ECC members or just in general?
Oh, just in general, that's an expense?
Oh, yes. Well, for
If
someone
some
like,
kid falls down on the jungle gym?
well, that's in the future. That's a different type of insurance. I was talking about if John Messerschmidt and his crew comes, they would have to be insured to use the types of machines he has or change
Oh.
them. And so he said he's already providing an additional insured certificate, and he's equipped for that. I have talked in some of the narratives that I've written and described the park or the property that we'd have to look into the cost of insurance. That's one of the 2021 pieces of progress we'd like to make, is how much would insurance cost to have people walk through there? And if they tripped on a branch, what would happen? And we would explore that. And that's why we're thinking about a booth as you enter. If the public was allowed on the property, or if there were school trips, there would have to be an understanding of what the insurance and liabilities are. Just like any park in the area, Mohonk, Madawaska, or any of the Esopus parks.
So there's no way for people for people to sign a waiver?
I'd have to find out and talk to our lawyer about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi,
I
Chris.
had a half pipe in my backyard, and my parents made everyone sign a waiver. I don't know how official it was. John?
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me? Art Skugavik.
Hey, Art. Yes.
Hi, how are you? So it sounds like a great idea, a wonderful idea for the community, and particularly if you're going to use this for educational opportunities for the local schools. My property abuts this land. So I was curious what thoughts that you had to, sort of secure your piece from the residents, particularly on Boyce Mill Road. What sort of fencing are you looking at, signage? Certainly have a couple of concerns just for the health and safety of my property and my family. Prefer not to have dogs off leash running around potentially into the woods, coming on to private property. You mentioned picnics and barbecues. Picnics, I think, are fantastic. Barbecues make me a little more nervous. So just curious as to your thoughts on, as you shape this idea out, what are your thoughts about quality of life and security for the residences who surround your park idea?
Thank you. I think when I mention a picnic or barbecue, I mostly think near the solar array where the parking would be, because we don't want a heavy use like that to go into the forest or near any neighbors. So in a way that we're not sure if we can picnic or barbecue, but that would be near where cars would be, where families would spend a little more time. I think what I have to do is learn how other parks manage the edges. I don't know if a full fence is feasible, but signage definitely. And also when I was in the park recently, or the property recently, I noticed it's just not smart to get near the edges, because there's ways to fully avoid them, 50 feet or more. And I would love to talk to you more about how to look at an edge and keep people, and signage is very important, dogs on leash. Councilwoman Hagen Depew has a concern about litter. And that's why I like the idea of a booth and supervision, because we need to teach people about it. If you carry it in, you carry it out. And especially if people aren't familiar with our parks and our rail trails in our area, they have to learn about how to keep our parks clean. So that's why I think it's smart to have some kind of supervisor role. And so far, the Environmental Commission has been talking about stewarding the land, doing plantings, working on the pollinator garden. And I believe we'd have to also talk, if they're willing to or able to, walk the park sometimes to make sure it's being used properly. And also work with neighbors to make sure the same.
Okay, and this park would also, be from dawn to dusk, correct? You're not going to have people camping. You're not going to have late night guests, anything of that nature, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's such a small parcel that it's really about education, because it's not feasible to walk for hours or even spend the night. So definitely dawn to dusk. And I almost shared a slide about how the entrance is very secure, because you have to come down a windy road even to get into the property. So it's the ability to see who comes and goes is very possible.
Okay, and then just last question, sort of following up on residents' concerns, what's left for stage 2? What is stage 3, taking you through, sort of approval process and then ultimately execution on the idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's why I'm excited to learn from Town of Esopus. I just recently found out they have 3 town parks. So they've created those parks on the Hudson, working with different agencies. And I would have to learn with the other town board members and our town lawyer, what are the steps that we'd have to take, and share with the community the whole time of what steps that we're taking. So I don't even know what phase 3 looks like at this point, because the town board has to approve each phase. So last week when we had the first few slides where I showed the 2020 progress and then suggested 2021 progress, we had a discussion about what's feasible, and we want to keep that conversation going. I think one thing that would be great for our town is informational sessions occasionally about something like this. So we can come together, have maps, ideas, drawings, feedback. It's very important.
Great, thank you.
I think the biggest question I have is, with a property like this that's so special with such large trees, how do we use it? That's my biggest question so far.
Okay.
Thanks, Art.
I have one. You were talking about a pollinator garden way back when they were building the panels of the array. Are you still talking about that? Is there going to be a pollinator garden inside the fence in between the panels?
Yeah, I spoke to Brad from NextAmp this morning, and he mentioned how they're very supportive of moving forward on the pollinator gardens in general. In the last slide I showed, you can see there's a lot of dead grasses and wildflowers. So we have to assess what exists already and then start to interplant between the panels. He said that they're supportive of the idea of having signage on all of the fencing, because they're doing innovative things like not only planting and maintaining pollinator gardens, but having sheep come in and spend time in the area to graze instead of having heavy machinery do all of the mowing. And so I mentioned that the ECC is interested in the project and helping and stewarding, and they were very happy to hear that, because they have a budget and they also care about solar education and also pollinators and proper species when we're doing plantings. And we can definitely ask them, John, and make sure that moves forward.
Yeah, I think that would be really great, especially with the birds in the area, and we can always use more birds and more pollinators.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'll take another one. I noticed the poison sumac. When I was there, I saw that giant poison sumac. It's amazing. No one's going to cut that down, but a nice sign there to let people know what poison sumac really looks like would be great. And also signs for the invasives that are there too, so people can be educated about the health and the non-health of the forest.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with that bush because at first I thought it was serviceberry or
Yeah,
not so much elderberry, but I was analyzing the bark and
witch hazel or something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's got
witch
that
hazel.
same shape as a witch hazel.
Yeah, and then I grabbed it to break a piece, and then I thought this could be poison sumac. I think I may have looked a little bit.
Yeah, I've never seen a poison sumac that big before. It's pretty nice.
Any other questions or even ideas or thoughts? I will be sharing, the ECC will be sharing this recording, and so as you're able to look at the presentation again, if you'd like, feel free to email me. I'll give you my email real quick, Anne, and I'll take your question. My email is chewitt, CHEWITT, @townofrochester.ny.gov. Anne?
I just wondered what your plans are. You had originally scheduled a volunteer day, and then the board said, oh, we can't do that until you get approval. Are you going to try to get approval for that?
I think we're moving forward on May 22nd to be a day where the Environmental Commission, even the Historic Preservation Commission, any town agency that would like to learn about the park can come together. And John's offer of helping with chainsawing and chipping, I think we will as a town look into the feasibility of that. Originally, there was some talk of making it open to the whole community, but again, we have to look into liability issues and how we can use our park. And that came up at the town board meeting last week as well. We have to learn from Mary Lou, what are the next steps? We have talked about May 22nd to come together and assess the species and all of the debris.
It could be a field trip, also kind of share it with everybody who's involved.
Like, you mean?
Like walk around and show us where these trees are, because some of us haven't seen it.
Oh, yes, right. No, true.
Yeah.
And we can even do a Facebook Live to share with the community. I think the biggest thing that comes up are liability issues, and we're not sure if anyone besides town officials can go there. So the ECC, Historic Preservation, Town Board.
So will you let us, the public, how will you let us know?
I
Yes,
can
excited by that.
I can email you as soon as I find out. Is that good?
Well, I was talking about not just me, but, you know,
Okay,
the
yes.
town at large.
I think the Environmental Commission will be meeting and discussing the May volunteer day. John, do you know when your next meeting is?
I believe it's usually the Tuesday after, let me see here, the last Tuesday of the month at 6:30.
So I will get that information to you before then, John.
Okay, I believe that would be the 20th. So that's next Tuesday.
Great.
Well, any other questions?
Yeah, I just was curious to know why it is that the rail trail doesn't seem to have these liability issues.
Good question.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's, you know, they're right next to houses and stuff. And
yeah. It could be because the county is behind it and has precedence as rail trails, but I think that's a great question. I'm writing that one down as well.
well, yeah, I mean, because, you know, it's already happening. Anyone can go to the rail trail.
Yeah, I think one thing that Supervisor Baden brought up is the difference between a public land like this that we all own that is locked, like the town hall isn't open 24/7, and rail trail, which you can spend time at any time. So I think that my job is to learn about the differences between the uses in our town, from rail trail to a piece that we own to.
So then the idea would be that you're going to sort of close it at dusk?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So
Yeah, Google Maps. And, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
is there going to be a fence? I mean, how would you close it? How would you open it?
Let me see. Hang on one sec. Oh, yeah. I have a picture of the driveway that I'd like to show you. As people enter, there's a driveway that looks like this. And so it's very small, very tight, and that could be easily monitored. It's not like anyone can come at any time, and we'd be able to put a gate. But fences, I think, is huge fence around a property like this is cost prohibitive, but that's why parks usually do signage and keeping trails away from edges.
I just wonder, would, you know, who would open and close the gate? Would it be like an automatic thing, or?
Well, at that point, once it's all official, it's a park and there's education happening, we would know the budget of who would sit in that booth. Like Mohonk Preserve has volunteers sit in their booth, whereas other parks might have a paid position. That's where we would start to understand what we charge. We'd have to do the budgeting of what our expenses are, and then we can know what a school group might pay or other entry.
And do you hope to cover the costs without resorting to, you know, money from the taxpayers? Or how would you do that? What do you think?
Well, since we've thought about this, I've thought Ulster County residents should have a ability to use it for free. And because of tourism and interest from the outside, other outside groups might be able to book it and we charge money. But our town has a budget for parks like this. We have a parks budget, we have a maintenance budget. It could be that a future town board sees this as something to continue funding so we don't have to charge at the gate. But I'm not assuming that that's the case. As we get closer to knowing what our costs are, then we know what to charge and who to charge.
I'm just curious, you said Nexam thought that this was an interesting idea that nobody else has necessarily approached them with on their other sites. So knowing that, how can you leverage their ownership and their maintenance of their solar farm and using that for you know, the park? Is there any opportunity to have them share costs, police the property, maintain the property? You know, what's their skin in the game?
So far, I could see from a community-minded perspective, they care about people understanding what they're doing. They care about it not being just hidden and not understood. And so I think in the past they've paid for certain things. Mike Baden could give better answers on what they've paid for, but they've used their budget to adjust certain parts of the plan and I think pay for different accesses or fencing adjustments. And when I called recently to talk about this, they thought, and actually Borrego was the original construction company, but when I called recently, they seem that they want to be innovative and embracing the communities that they're in. So the town of Rochester still owns the land and they pay a lease every year to the town. I don't know how much they would pay. And today when I asked them to pay for wood chips or signage, it was really just an exploratory conversation. And I like your idea. Would they be willing to talk about a gate, an entrance, labor?
Well, I guess to that point, what I would add is if they're interested in selling their services to the community and getting more people to buy into the use of the solar farm, you know, maybe your gate is manned by a booth, just like many of the other parks and, you know, Mohonk or whatnot. And maybe there's a Nexamp representative in there who's available to talk about the benefits of solar. So here's an opportunity for them to sell their expertise and, you know, their product. But then also that would allow us to have them, you know, provide maybe some revenue, some maintenance costs, maybe that fencing that you said might be difficult to have, you know, between the park and some of the residences. maybe that's an opportunity for next amp. Again, like I said, a little bit of a quid pro quo. They get to talk about, their expertise, but then also share some of the money and the cost to do this thing correctly.
Yeah, it's a unique public-private partnership idea.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Thanks, Ed.
I just want to say, as far as fencing goes, you really, you got to think about fencing because of animals and animals crossing back and forth from one place to another. So
Yeah.
any fencing would have to take that into account, I think, if we want to be, responsible nature stewards.
Yeah. We want to make sure we don't create one problem by having a solution. But again, that's why I like learning from existing examples like Mohawk Preserve and Minnewaska and how they handle it. Todd?
But if next amp is actually paying a rent, there's income, there's money there, right? Wouldn't it be possible to funnel some of that money towards this? The actual rental?
Yeah, that's like when we mentioned the budgeting earlier, the town could choose to support a park like this every year or a property and education center like this every year. So right now, each solar lease brings in money for the town, and the town board could choose to allot some of that money to an educational idea.
Oh, good.
I noticed on Google Maps that the property, the forested property to the east of this parcel is for sale. Is that for sale? That's where those cottages are and the pool.
Yeah, it is for sale.
Is that possible? Is it possible for the town to buy that property and extend the one if the park is approved to extend the boundaries of that park into that area?
Yes, that is possible. I don't know if we would have the budget. It's over $1 million, and that would, I mean, it's over 100 acres, and it's a beautiful parcel as well. And maybe there could even be a partnership in the future with a private owner, kind of like the Catskill Park.
Yeah, or
Park.
the land conservancy also. Yeah.
Right. The Catskill Park is unique because of its relationship between private and public ownership and how well they work together.
Yeah, the forests are kind of fragmented around there, but it's mostly farmland. And on the other side of 209, it's pretty contiguous. There's a lot of forest there. So I think it's a very valuable wildlife habitat corridor there that we could maintain and make it more accessible for animals and for people too. We all love to see our wildlife.
It's a great vision, John.
Yeah. And so is this park. I love it. I love it.
Any other questions? I see Jamie just came in recently. The presentation will be available. It's being recorded, but if you have any questions, just let us know.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then we can wrap it up. Next month, on the third Thursday, Laura Chavez Silverman is going to give an introduction to foraging. She's going to offer some basic guidelines that will ensure your foraging is safe, meditative, and sustainable. So that's going to be a great presentation. Get to learn about some foraging. So tune in for that. If you want to be on the mailing list, email rochesterecc@gmail.com. Put you on there. And thank you very much, Chris. Looking forward to seeing this project develop.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you.
All right. Bye, everyone.